Fear is not my future, birthed from Kirst and from Sam from their testimony, and it's been amazing and it's been a shift, and I'm believing that this is part 3 and this series will shift hearts if you allow it to. So it really is my privilege to bring part 3 tonight. One of my chores growing up, remember, do you know what chores are, young people? One of my chores growing up, I was raised on the farm, and I mean like sheep, wheat farm, like big farm, down in country Victoria. And one of my chores when I got off the school bus, had a snack, I had to bring up the milk and cow to the shed. And I was only a little girl, I was only in primary school, relatively easy job because you'd go out to the front paddock, she was just in the front paddock, and I'd go, 300 metres or so into the paddock, and you literally, the older folk would know what I mean by calling the cows home. That is exactly what I did. You just go so far and you start calling out, come on, come on, come on, and she'd see you, and then I'd just stand there and she'd come to me, and off we would go walking up to the sheds, and I'd shut her into the yard and give her something to eat, and it was a good time. So I loved my milking cow. She was gorgeous. She knew the routine. It was really not an issue. I liked my chore. Didn't tell mum and dad that, but normally an easy job to do. This particular day, I can remember getting home, going out, doing my chore as normal. My cow wasn't responding, and so I was getting further out into the paddock thinking, that's so weird, come on, where are... And then I spotted her. The problem was communication's really vital on a farm. It's always got to do with normally shutting a gate, like, guys, you can't ride your bikes there. We had motorbikes. You can't drive here. I had 2 older brothers, so they're always in paddock bashes, hooning around. Normally because, throughout the day, Dad, my grandfather, would shift sheep, something like that. So communication is key. And I quickly discovered that this day, Dad forgot to tell me some very vital information. And what had happened during the day was that Dad put the bull in with the milking cow for a sleepover. And when females and males get together in the animal kingdom, they what they do. And that was a normal sight for me because I'm around animals all the time when I was a kid. So that the sight was not the issue. It was the issue that it was a bull. And I'm on my legs, I'm on my feet. The fence now, because I've gone out further than normal, is way, way behind me. The tree in front of me, and I'm looking at, not staring because I'm little, bull's big, and I'm staring at an angry bull. And because the loyal milking cow was so loyal to me, she's like, oh, that's my person, I've got to go with her. I'm like, no. Instantly, I was gripped with fear. I can remember, I think it was my first experience where I just felt fear like I have never felt. I just froze. I can remember the shivers that went through my body because I just went, oh my gosh, I'm going to be very broken or very dead. I was quite a runner back in the day. I was quite speedy, as my 3-year-old grandson says. Say speedy. And I was quite the runner, but I knew that a ticked off bull, I had no hope. But yet panic, I was so panicked, and my instinct was just to turn and run, or my instinct was just to freeze and just die. I'm like, well, 10 years old, it's been great. But as I'm looking at this book, and one of the things that I was grateful for was that my dad and my eldest brother taught me, because I was the only girl besides my mum, but I was a girl, and so girls kind of, I guess, react with a bit of a scream and so one of my things that they taught me earlier on was that do not panic. Stay calm and do not react, because we're around animals all the time and they're unpredictable. And so something strange, I was gripped with fear and I was absolutely panicked, and my instinct wanted to just turn and run and just give it a good hot go. But yet something strange happened, and I can remember this calmness that took over my body, and I can just remember, stop looking at the bull, drop your gaze, and just slowly, don't panic, stay in control, don't react, and just back slowly up. Nothing to see, carry on, nothing to see here. Just slowly back up. And I kept my eyes low and I just slowly backed up, and I was looking for this. It was a telephone pole in the paddock, and I knew once I can see that out the corner of my eye, I've probably got 50 metres and I can turn around and I can go. And I've never been so glad to just, okay, we got this. We got this. Slowly stay control, don't panic. Saw the telephone pole. It was all a blur after that, because I can tell you what, I've got the world record, I've got the Olympic gold medal of a 50-metre sprint and a high tail over the fence. I broke the record that day. Still stands to this day. Thank you very much. Gold medal. No one can come close to my record. I sprinted my little butt off, got over the fence. I can't remember much else after that, but I think I must have just been so relieved that I'm all together and not dead. After I calmed down, I can remember. I didn't remember, because I did have a relationship with God. I was raised as a Christian. We went to church, and I did have an authentic, childlike faith in God, and I loved God. And I can remember when I calmed down. I couldn't at the time, but after, when I calmed down, I can remember, thank you, God. I knew God had kept me calm. I knew it was the training, what my brother and my father had said to me. It was what I was raised to do, but it was also, I knew that God was with me and God protected me and helped me. Jesus was a very good teacher, and I had a really good teacher with my father and my brother teaching me some very crucial things like that, because that's crucial, right? Stay calm. And Jesus was a very good teacher. And he had these moments with his disciples where he would take them just by themselves and he'd just teach them. And one of the things that he said in John 16:33, he says, in this world you will have trouble. Like it's a warning to them. Guys, in this world you will have trouble. Now I think of trouble, if you think of trouble, you think, well, like yesterday, trying to get a park out of Studio 3, parallel parking, and normally you go up, back, in, that. But not me, yesterday. I went up, back, okay, and did this a few times. So I was having trouble with my parallel park at Studio 3 yesterday. That's what I think trouble is. But then, I looked it up in the dictionary, and this is what it actually means. To cause one inward commotion, to take away one's calmness of mind, to disturb one's equanimity, if I can say that quite right, to disquiet, to make restless, to strike one's spirit with dread or fear, to render anxious or distressed. Quite the list. And that's how come I remembered my bull story, because I thought that is all how I felt. I was very distressed, very anxious, very fearful, lost my calmness of mind. That's what trouble is. And I think that that's what Jesus was meaning. This is what trouble is when he's saying, guys, you're going to have a bit of trouble in your world. And I have found over my 53 years that trouble can come in 3 categories. And I think the first one would be just from circumstances, just from situations that really have got nothing to do with you, that have just dropped along into your path and now you have to deal with it. Classic circumstance, bull in the paddock that you had no clue about, on foot, That's a trouble. You didn't have anything to do with it. It's a circumstance, or it's caused from other people, or it's caused from hurt, or it's caused from betrayal, or a grief, or even an unexpected illness. Things that you didn't sign up for, things that you didn't have anything to do with, but yet here it is on your path and now you have to deal with it. That's one. That's just one. The second one would be what I would think is from the enemy. We don't really talk much about the enemy, the devil, Satan, call it like it is, but we do actually have an enemy. And his role is to take us Christ followers off the path that God has put us on. And he takes the ones that just don't know Jesus just yet, and he will try then keep them there and not get them and prevent them from getting onto this path. That's his role. And so he would normally do that by causing isolation. He causes division, then isolation, and then he will, while you've been separated from the flock and while you are alone and while you're isolated, then he will tell you lies. And it's normally mixed with a snippet of truth because then it's more believable. Or he'll tempt us with things and he just generally causes upheaval. And then lastly, the third one is by our own doing. Seen it, liked it, wanted it, boom, open the door to sin. All three we fall into, all three. This is the trouble. This is what Jesus is saying, guys. John 16:33, you're going to have some trouble. Let me read it out in context. I have told you these things. I'm telling you these things. This is Jesus speaking. So that in me, in Jesus, you will have peace. In this world, you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. That to me, when I read that in its entirety, that's a promise. In me, you stick with me, guys. In me, you've got peace. And peace is a big, long meaning. It's not just calmness of mind. It's a lot in peace. The warning, in this world, you will, not may, not might, you will have trouble. But we go back to the first promise, in me, combine it with go through some trouble, and together we'll overcome it. We will get through it together. We will get through it. I love, at the minute, all the kids upstairs are in superhero costumes, including my daughter. I love it that they are being taught heroes of the faith. Love it, love it, love it. I love a good hero of the faith because you know why? They're good biblical characters. They're true stories that happened in the good book. And it's a really great foundation, that our kids are learning at the minute. And they're just really normal people. They're just ordinary people, but have gone through and going through funny, weird things, and it's what did they do to get through it? And if we're talking about heroes, one of my heroes would have to be David. And when I say David, I think most of us think of David and Goliath. I don't presume that everyone does know who David is, but most of us, if you think of David, you would think, yep, that's that guy David and Goliath, that story. And David is, this was a very public battle. It was David's first public battle, and it was with Goliath. But before that public battle happened, he was just David, the shepherd boy. David was the youngest of 8 boys. 8. Was just, yeah, right? 8 boys. There was a few sisters thrown in. They don't get much of a mention, but 8 boys. Like, Kirsty's pregnant with her 3rd one, and she's like, ooh, 3 boys. 8, Kirst. You've got a ways to go. 8 boys. That woman, that dad. Like, these people just kept breeding back then. But 8 boys. And he was the youngest. And his older brothers were impressive-looking, large fighting men because back in the day, you had to be a big man because there was always battles going on. But David was not like that. David was small and he had finer features. So while his brothers were off doing big, important, fighting enemy things, because David wasn't that physique, so David was put in charge of tending his father's sheep. I was raised with sheep and cows And sheep are stupid. They really are. They're flighty. They stink. They're just difficult to manage. So I take my hat off to David because I just think they are difficult to manage. They got no clue. Cows know sort of work out where you're going, so they just follow you along. Sheep, stupid. And this is why, one of the reasons why David's my hero, because instead of David feeling quite small and insignificant, a bit overlooked, a bit forsaken, a bit forgotten, a bit unloved, David instead set his heart and his mind on God. In the secret place, in the hidden place where it was just him, his smelly sheep, and God. In the secret place, he worshipped, he praised, he sang, he depended on, he relied on, he chatted and developed a really good, healthy relationship with God. And it was here in the hidden place where then God had to teach him how to take care of all these sheep, because it was his responsibility to keep all these stupid sheep safe. So he was sent trouble in the way of lion, bear, bull, to develop a foundation that God would help him and was with him and helped him, protect him, and helped him take care of the sheep. So David's foundation early on was based on dependence, trust, reliance in God in the secret. So when the first public battle come along that we know of as David and Goliath, nothing's new for David. Nothing's changed. Nothing's new. This is just another trouble that's come across his path. The only thing that's different is that now there's just people everywhere. This is public. And from this very public battle and now famous battle, David becomes quite a bit of a hero, quite popular. So now the troubles keep coming. That's just one public battle. Because he grew quite popular and then he turned out to be a U-Butte soldier and a U-Butte warrior, he goes and fights many more battles, and then his 7 older brothers who were soldier-like were just like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? You know, so now he's dealing with his brothers that were just like, probably jealous of him. Then the king of the day, who loved him to start off with, thought he was awesome. The king then thinks, you know, he started getting jealous of him because he grew so popular and people just loved him. So now the king's jealous of him, so jealous that he wants him dead. So now David has to flee for his life. And another battle that I love about David was that by now he grew and he had his own soldiers because, you know, he developed a bit of a following. And so by now he's got his own soldiers because they knew that God was with him. And they knew that the battles that he fought were God was with him and they would always pretty much win them. So he had quite the soldiers that he was now in charge of. And one day him and his soldiers were out fighting the enemy here. But then what happened here was that the enemy came here and took all their wives, children, possessions, everything. Let me read just that one out. 1 Samuel 33. When David and his men reached Ziklag, they found it destroyed by fire, their wives, sons and daughters taken captive. So David and his men wept aloud until they had absolutely no strength left to weep. David's 2 wives had been captured. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters, but David found strength in the Lord his God. This is why he's my hero, because even everything now was taken from him. His wives, his children, his possessions, and now his own loyal fighting men all turned his back on him and wanted him dead also. And the only thing that he knew was from his foundations, and it was from his relationship with God. And he found strength in God. That actually does have a happy ending. He went and found all the people and brought them back. It does have a happy ending. Most of David's battles that he faced were from the result of the enemy or result from circumstance. They really were not, most of the battles were not caused by David himself. He was just, they just dropped onto his path, or it was from the enemy. But this one battle, in the name of Bathsheba. David, who now was a king by now, saw Bathsheba bathing on the rooftop. Trouble was, she's a married woman. Trouble was, David thought she was hot. Trouble was, David slept with her, got her pregnant. Trouble was, now he really was in trouble. And since he was a king, long story cut very, very short, he forgot to include God in his plans, and so he just took matters into his own hands and sent Bathsheba's husband out to the front line of war, got him killed. So now he's free to hook up with Bathsheba and, you know. But then along come a prophet called Nathan, Pastor Nate. And Pastor Nate knocks on David's door, King David, and says, David, I don't think, do you really think that this has escaped God? And Pastor Nate called him out on it and told him that God has seen this. What you have done is wrong. And this is another reason why he's my hero, because he was the king. He was a pretty big deal. He could have been really arrogant and he could have justified it. But he recognised his sin, he repented, he asked for forgiveness, humbled himself, and he stood corrected. Humbleness, humble knees. And I just think, church, the troubles that we face, they're in these three categories. Some are not our fault. Some are from the enemy, and some are our fault. But the answer is, it's Jesus. It's our relationship with Jesus. It's going back to that John 16:33. In me, you will have peace. You have peace. And when trouble comes, if you stay in me, you can overcome it. You can get through it. But the key is, you've got to stay in him. Whether it's your fault, their fault, at the end of the day, it does not matter. It's you remaining in him. It's me remaining in him. And over my years, I have realised when trouble has come my way and I didn't cause it, and it's hurtful, and it's grief. When people die on you, that's grief. Or it's hurtful. Or when people have said something and it's hurtful. When things come across your path and you didn't cause it, that is hurtful. Or when it's just been my own sin. It's humble knees, Let's be okay with having some scuffed knees. Let's be okay just with humbleness and just going, I can't do this, God. But in you, I have got peace. And in you, this is a trouble that I'm facing. But in you, I've got peace. I've got everything I need. And together, we can get through this. Together, we can overcome this. I really could have frozen that day out in that paddock, or I could have ran, because that's what my instinct was telling me to do. But it was Jesus. It really was. It was Jesus. It was the author of peace here. And the instinct of what I had been taught as a little girl to stay calm. And it kept me calm. It kept me in control. It kept me moving. In this case, backwards. It kept me balanced, and it kept me safe, and it kept me alive. And David could have been bitter and sour because he's the smallest and he wasn't worthy of being a soldier. And David could have justified his sin because he was a king, but he didn't. It was his relationship with God. It always come back to his relationship with God. And I think David's best title is not King David, but it's a man after God's own heart. As the band can come. Fear is not my future, but we are going to face trouble. And in those moments of trouble, you will feel all the feels of the list of what I said trouble is. You will feel a bit anxious. You will feel absolutely fearful and frozen with fear. You might feel rejected. You might feel overwhelmingly hurt. You might have to go through some grief. But stick with Jesus. Stick with Jesus. Go through the trouble. Don't camp there. Don't camp through the trouble. Keep moving through the trouble and you will get through it. You will overcome it. You and Jesus together, you will overcome it. Kirsty, when she was chatting, that she relied on a small army of people, that trusted people that she went to in her time of need. And I absolutely value that. I get that. I love that myself, have it myself. But before any of that is this. It's this first. Because sometimes they're not going to be there, this army, these trusted people, sometimes they're not going to be there at 3 o'clock in the morning. But God is. I went yesterday and saw the movie Jesus Revolution. Recommend it. And it was about these hippies, thousands of hippies, looking for love, looking for peace, looking for Jesus, but didn't know it. So they tried drugs. And they thought that was the answer. And then this one pastor opened up his door to the church, of his church, and let them in. And thousands upon thousands got saved. That's why it's called Jesus Revolution. They were baptizing thousands every week. Thousands. And their trouble was drugs. That was their main trouble that they were facing, was drugs. And I got home and I've been thinking about it ever since. In this generation, that was in the 60s or 70s, and we're in 2023. What's our trouble? Is it still drugs? What is our main trouble? And I reckon it's busyness. We're so busy. 2023, we're just so busy. Busy. And this. Because trouble's still going to come along in the busyness, but that is the trouble because you're just so busy. But busyness will get you a little bit broken. I've been really busy before my life and it just didn't serve me well. I got a bit broken. You just don't bounce back from that. Even in the busyness, even in the chaos that is your life. It's this. It's this. It has to be always your relationship with God, always. Whether that is opening up the Word, just picking out one psalm, one verse. Take John 16:33 home and unpack that for the week. And just do a short prayer in your busyness. Just daily chat with God. Daily worship Him. Daily. You've got to do it daily. It's the busyness of our generation that is taking people out. There's a Jesus revolution in 2023, but it's hearts connected to God first and foremost. It's Jesus. And I think the other distraction is the smaller version of this, the old iPhone. Don't let distraction and busyness take you out from Jesus. He's the way, He's the truth, He's the life, He's your peacemaker, He's the author of peace, and we have an amazing access to Him. But if we're not chatting with Him, how are we ever going to overcome the trouble? You'll stay stuck in the trouble. We don't want stuck Christ followers. We've got to keep moving. We've got to declare salvation over our cities. Don't stay stuck. We're about to go into worship. And whatever trouble that you may be facing, humble knees. What's it going to hurt? You know, humble knees. Get on your knees and praise him, worship him, because this is it. It's you and Jesus.